Solidarity songs, the usual bite for this gathering, expressing their resolve. Insecurity and unemployment top the list of reasons why they're calling for a change in government.
They are joined from our tertiary institutions and they join the colony of unemployed. We have made a position today, and that position is resounding and clear that the continuous affirmation in the Buhari administration must stop.
It started off as a peaceful protest, but not for long. With the police at the scene, the protesters dispersed, ending the protest abruptly, same way it did last year, with some protesters arrested. In Lagos, the protesters gathered as early as 10 a.m. at the state capital Ikeja. It was a large procession. But there was a pushback from the police. The action of the police was met with some resistance.
Police force have no right to disrupt a legitimate protest. We are a peaceful protester to march for our freedom. Revolution!
In the southwest state of Osun, the protesters are not in a large number, but their voice was loud enough to get the attention of authorities. The arrival of the men of the DSS threw the scene into chaos, with some protesters arrested. The founder of the RevolutionNow movement, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, is currently in a legal battle with the federal government after he was arrested last year for organizing a nationwide protest and calling for a revolution against the government, a move authorities have totally condemned.
Welcome back. So let's talk about the report you just saw. We've got Mr. Tokpe Akeode, who is the National President, Revolutionary Lawyers Forum. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. We also have Mr. Femi Adesina, who is the SA to the President on Media and Publicity, joining us via Zoom. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you both for joining us today. Let me start with you, Mr. Akeode. Well, yes, many may have heard some parts of why the protest is. So if you could just give us an update, why embark on this protest this time?
The protest is coming up as a result of the many failings of the Nigerian government. As it is today, there is high level of poverty in the country. Nigeria is well rated globally among the poorest countries of the world. There's unemployment, youth graduate from universities or tertiary institutions without gaining employment. There's rise in insecurity all through the country, especially in the northern part of the country. Lives are being lost in large numbers by the day. And so it has become a matter of reasonability, a matter of common sense. It is a natural reaction that people, Nigerians, would naturally engage the government and criticize the government and disagree with the government on the poor policies of the government and the continuous failings of the government, like I said. So that's why the revolutionary protests are continued, and that's why it's held yesterday.
Yeah, in that protest across different parts of the country where the group are asking for a change of government. Is that right?
If failing government has no reason to stay, there's no point reinforcing failure. Nigerians have the right to demand for the resignation of a government that has been underperforming. But anyways, the demand of the protesters is clearly articulated and well noted. Provide employment, provide security for the people, improve the welfare of Nigerians. That's all. It's not too big to ask. If the government can provide that, why not? Anyways, it is a fundamental right of the citizens to make these demands.
Okay, Mr. Adesina, you heard some of what he said about why they're protesting, but many don't understand the role of the authorities, why they think that it's not right for that protest to go on. But what did you think of the protest?
Well, was it really a protest? By my estimation, that just seemed like child's play, because protests by their very nature are spontaneous things. They are mass things. I just saw a sprinkle of people trying to be funny. As far as I'm concerned, it's nothing to worry about, because when you talk of a revolution is always a mass thing, not those sprinkle of young boys and girls you saw yesterday in different parts of the country. I think it was just a funny thing to call it a protest and a revolution protest.
Why does it sound to me as though you're talking down on these individuals? Because they are Nigerians. Yes, they are young, but they have a right to voice the issues they have. If you say that was not a protest, I mean, the definition of a protest basically saying, coming out to say, I don't agree with this. That's a protest. So you still think that was not a protest?
It's your opinion, and you have a right to it. You see, it's often funny to hear that you are talking down on people simply because you don't agree. You don't have to agree with everything anybody says. No, you don't have to. But it doesn't tantamount to talking down on anybody.
No, Mr. Adesina, when you call it child's play, that's talking down on them. You use that term, it was child's play. No, it was what you said, Mr. Adesina. You used the word child's play.
And I stand by it. And I stand by it. In a country of 200 million people, if you see that sprinkle of people saying they are doing a revolution march, it was like a child's play, I tell you.
So does government determine the weight or how seriously they take protests by the size or the number of people who speak up against it?
Well, it will always matter, because if you said it was a revolution by their natures are quite well known. Revolution is something that turns the normal order. What happened yesterday, would you call it a revolution? It was just an irritation. It was just an irritation, and some people just want to cause irritation in the country. And what I'd like to say is that when things boil over, they boil over because you continue to heat them. And when you see pockets of heating up in the country all over the place, eventually they culminate in a heating up, in a boiling over. So Nigerians need to know that the country we get is what we use our own hands to build.
Okay. Mr. Adesina, there were some issues that the young man raised, which was the reason for the protest, which, of course, you have defined it as you have. Rising unemployment, increasing poverty rate, and massive insecurity. Some of these concerns have been addressed, by you at some other fora. For them, it just doesn't seem like, it's hitting home. It just doesn't seem like whatever it is that government is doing is not hitting home. I think, you would also agree as a journalist, that they have the right to at least raise some of these issues. How is government taking on those issues that they have raised?
Thank you. Now, the question I would also like to ask is, which country in the world doesn't have those issues? Almost none. Almost none, particularly at this time and season that the world is passing through. Which country doesn't have those issues? Those issues are like peculiar to every country of the world. Now, if government is striving and bending over backwards and doing its best to sort out these issues, and you then go out with these irritants and distractions, are you contributing to progress, or you are trying to pull back progress? All these things have been tackled by government. In fact, that is why government exists, to make sure that the quality of lives of the people is better. That is why government exists. And this is one government that has been working assiduously to ensure that life is better for the people. The larger number of Nigerians know and they understand. But the pockets of people that go on these irritating protests, well, good luck to them, is what I would say. If somebody would not say I'm talking down on Nigerians again.
All right, Mr. Kiyode, you want to react to what you have heard Mr. Adesina say?
Absolutely. You see, we have to forgive Mr. Adesina and then the Buhari government for, all the things they spill. They don't understand these things. They are bereft of the fundamental workings of democracy and the rule of law. They don't know what protest means. They can't appreciate it. Buhari is a dictator. He doesn't obey court order. So he doesn't know that Nigerians or the people have the right to protest, which is why Mr. Adesina continuously was talking down on Nigerians, saying it was a child play, it was an irritation, and all sorts, because this government has no knowledge of the fundamental workings of a democracy. Having said that, you see, what I see is that the government is hell-bent on failing. This is a government that is underperforming largely. It's a woefully failed government. And people are coming out to criticize the government and to raise genuine concerns that affect their life. And the government is trivializing it. We are in a big problem. If you see yesterday the things that happened, you will discover that Nigeria is in a big, deep mess. As soon as protesters gathered, making demands from the government without having any arms on them, Nigerian government mobilized a combination of the army, soldiers, state security service, police force, and to attack protesters. And that was what it saw. And so this government is a government that has sworn to failure, to continue to monitor the unemployment in the country, to continue to monitor the high insecurity in the country, to continue to disrespect court orders, rule of law, and the fundamental rights of Nigerian citizens. This is what the government has sworn to.
All right,
so
Mr. Kiyode, let me ask you.
It becomes an irritation for them if you raise these issues.
Well, let me ask you, when, because you also referenced that, look, the group calls itself RevolutionNow. You're asking for a change of government, and then you're asking for some of these issues as well to be addressed. So some may think that those are mixed signals. If you're asking for a change of government, the only way you can do that in a democracy is when you go out to vote the next time out. So in that regard, aren't you sending mixed signals to those who are listening to you?
You see, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed by the myopic definition that Mr. Adesina gave RevolutionNow, especially being a journalist who should have fundamental knowledge of the English language. A revolution has many meanings to it. You cannot attach a single meaning to the word revolution. And
what is your meaning?
Have deficiency in the use of English language. Revolution can also mean an improvement, an advancement in a system which has positive, long-lasting impact. The demands of the revolutionary protesters are well articulated. They are engaging the government on its failings, unemployment, low turnout in the right, low unemployment insecurity, non-payment of the 30,000 naira minimum wage, and many other things. And if the protesters are demanding for, the removal of the present government as it's constituted, is a constitutionally guaranteed right. The law allows for the impeachment of any validly elected government. And for a government as this, that has woefully failed as this, isn't it proper for it to resign, even on its own volition? So if protesters, if Nigerians make a demand for the government of the day, having failed this woefully, to set itself aback and let other people run the country, there's no big deal in it. It's a constitutional right that Nigerians can demand for. But that is not even the major demand, like I said earlier. That's not the major demand of the Revolution Now movement of protesters. The major demand of the Revolution Now movement of protesters is to engage the government on its continuous many failings, which has now become an aberration, and which appears to be the order of the day of the Nigerian government.
Right, so let's get back to Mr. Adesina now. So, Mr. Adesina, Mr. Akinode is talking about engagement now. I mean, he has tried to define revolution. He has defined revolution the way the protesters see it. But now he's talking about engagement. Is that something the government is open to?
Well, let me make this point. Channels TV should have been ethical and professional enough to tell me that I was appearing with somebody. And I could then decide whether I wanted to appear or not to appear. The way this young man is talking, if I had a chance, I wouldn't want to share a platform with him, because he is irascible, he is irrational, he doesn't understand. And I could have decided whether I was appearing with him or not. But I'm here, though I didn't know the nature of the person that was appearing with me. Well, I needed to have it too. Now, to your question, does government engage? Government does not exist in a vacuum. It's not like something in the sky. Government exists to serve with the people, to serve the people, and they engage with the people. If you don't engage with the people, how do you serve them? Government talks with the people, it gets feedback from the people, and those feedbacks inform the policies and programs of government. So for anybody to say there's no engagement, I think it's just theory. It's just theory. And a lot of people like to just verbalize theories without knowing what actually is happening in their own country.
Mr. Adesina, about half the population of Nigeria are made of youths. Is there any particular way in which government engages this large number of Nigerians?
Oh, yes. Remember that there is a ministry for youths combined with sports, youth and sports development. I'm sure you got the information just 2 executive council meetings ago that a youth bank was going to be established with a large capital base just to empower Nigerian youths. You know that youths are today engaged through other means like Empower and all that, just for upkeep and existentialism. The youth bank is now coming for empowerment to set them up so that they could do things on their own. Now, that was done just 2 weeks ago. For somebody to now come to say no program, no policy, unemployment and all that, when government is doing all its best to even make things better for the entire country and for youths, it shows that some people don't just have understanding.
Okay, Mr. Adesina, add to that, the fact that some people would say that, the issues that are being addressed, the number of people that are being addressed with the Empower program, the number of youths that the Empower program is touching are just like maybe a sprinkle as well. I mean, some could say that. You know, on the one hand is what the federal government is doing. On the other hand are what the states are doing, and the kind of intervention or conversations that should be going between the federal government and the state government. So if a large number of people are having issues, do not have access to some of these issues that you have raised, some of these opportunities that you have raised, and the federal government's figures of unemployment are on the rise, don't you think they have reason to express some concern?
I agree with you. I agree with you that it's a sprinkle, because Empower 500,000 youths out of like 30, 40 million, I don't have the exact figures of youths that need employment. When candidate Buhari was contesting in 2014 against the 2015 election, when he was campaigning, I remember that he was using figures like 30 to 35 million unemployed youths. So the government realizes the problem. But you see, the problem will not be solved in one fell swoop. You will have to have policies, you have to have programs that will redound eventually to touch the life of these youths. It's not that you wave a magic wand and these problems disappear. And one of the most pragmatic things that have been formulated is this youth bank that is coming. Government can't be doing all these, and some people come and they are shooting breeze and they say government should resign, it's inefficient, it's ineffective, it's not doing anything. No, please, I think I will advise you, don't just bring people that don't have understanding to come and say anything on your platform.
Okay, Mr. Akiyode, let's address the specific issues now. You have heard Mr. Adesina, and a significant number of things are being done at various levels, federal and state. Have you been able, or the number of people that you've talked about or spoken with, is there any way they've been able to constructively engage the people that they elected into office?
Of course. Part of the protest, which held yesterday, is a constructive way of engaging the government. Like I said to you, not just as the way Mr. Adesina sees it, that a young guy, I'm a lawyer, and I have the understanding of the law. It is a constitutionally guaranteed right of Nigerians to protest. It's a settled law. As a matter of fact, the RevolutionNow protest has been sanctioned by the court. The court has given a judicial approval of the protest because it accords with the fundamental human rights of citizens. Last year, when the protest was disrupted by the government, security agencies, the federal government, deciding on the legality of the RevolutionNow protest, had to caution the Nigerian government and make a scapegoat of the Nigerian police force by ordering the police to make apologies on the pages of 3 different national dailies, front pages of 3 different national dailies, and to pay a deterrent fine of 1 million naira to protesters. So it is a constructive, legally recognized, globally approved way of engaging the government. In fact, it's the best way to engage the government. Right now, you have the spokesperson of the president have to react to this. The Nigerian government also, they have to make a statement on it because it is the fundamental right of the citizen. It is well noted. It is well
let me ask you as well. We'll wind down this.
In global practice.
What do you say to those? Just hang on a minute. What do you say to those who think that first, well, the leader, Shore, participated in the elections, he didn't win the elections, and now his group is leading a protest, and so the messages that your group is asking may be muddled because some will look at it from that prism, having been in an election. So the messages there may not be as clear as if it were someone who was not in an election. Do you get the point?
I get you, but there is no provision of the law that says that as soon as you engage in contesting
an
election,
law now.
You lack the right to engage the government. I will give you an historical, just something very simple. The present Nigerian president, Muhammadu Buhari, after he lost the election earlier in 2011, protested against the government of President Goodluck Jonathan. He led a protest. In fact, the protest was also disrupted and all that, and it has to be sanctioned by the court. That the Nigerian government does not have the right to issue permits to protesters. And the best the police can do to protesters is to ensure that their security is well preserved during the protest. So the present president has also engaged in many protests, flooded the streets, led protesters against a government in which he also contested and lost the election. Like I said to you, there is no provision of the Nigerian law that bars a contestant in an election
Mr.
from exercising his fundamental human right.
We're winding down now, and I would like to take Mr.
criticizing the
Adesina's closing statements. Thank you. So, Mr. Adesina, I mean, he has made his point, and we recall last year when this happened, it spiraled into a long-drawn, detention. In fact, U.S. lawmakers had to intervene, asking why Nigeria's Attorney General ignored court orders. You recall the invasion of a court by DSS and the eventual arrest. It turned out kind of messy, and a lot of people are wondering, has the government learned from that? Hope we won't have a repeat of that this time around.
No, the government will do whatever is right in the country, whatever is required to maintain peace, amity, equilibrium in a country. Government will do. What other governments will say may not particularly be cast in concrete. A government will do what is good for its people and the country at any given time. And it is the duty of government to ensure that there is peace and order in a country, just as it is also legitimate to have protests. I'm not saying protests are illegitimate. Protests, and the courts have established that, people can protest. But when a protest can cause a breach of law and order, it is also the rights and responsibilities of government to make sure that that does not happen.
All right, well, thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Femi Adesina, SA to the President on Media and Publicity, and Mr. Tokwe Akiode, National President, Revolutionary Lawyers Forum. Thank you as well for coming on the program.